Hey, Good News family. This is Tana Heineman, the host of our Now What podcast. This is where we unpack Sunday's message and we talk about how to practically apply it to our everyday lives. I love that you're here with us, and I love that we get the opportunity to spend more time with our pastors and have them teach us even more what the Word has to say about our everyday lives. We learn from Jesus that one of the best ways to grow is in community together. So join us as we unpack Sunday's message. Hey, Good News family, we're so glad you're here again today. As you can see, I have Pastor Miki with us today and also Pastor Rafael. Hello. Hey guys, so glad you're here. I think this is your first time on the podcast, right?
It is.
Okay, well, tame, all right? Like, be nice, be settled.
Settle down.
Yeah, don't scare her away, you know. Okay, but first, before we start talking about our normal business, I have something I have to take care of. So someone wanted to get a shout out on the podcast, and but they were too afraid to tell me their name. So the next comments I make are directed directly to you. The person who went through the effort to help Tim put a dead mouse into an empty water bottle and then nicely place that on my desk. He's now visited 2 other offices, and then now he's in the eternal damnation of the dumpster. So God rest his soul, whatever we do. But anyways, so you were looking for a shout out. I just gave your shout out. So now you need to either comment on the YouTube video or email us at podcast@goodnews.church or come find me in the auditorium and let me know who you are, because Tim has been very faithful to not give it away on who helped with that cute little tiny mouse. So
He wasn't cute. He was dead.
oh, I
was
know,
awesome.
but he was cute.
It
No,
was great. If you have anything else that you want to place in the water bottle,
I'll give
dead-
you the key to Pastor Raphael's office.
Oh, come on. I was
Yeah,
just gonna
exactly.
say, I'll let you know how to get it to Tana's office. That would be great.
Oh, anyways. And listen, I live somewhere where there are a few mice running around and other random things. So we can play this game, and I will bring some rodents.
Oh yeah, because you have some huge animals
Yeah.
that kill things too.
Right, that too.
Yeah.
And listening to, anyways, I'm not going to go there. The conversations that were happening at my house of what animals you could maybe shoot from your deck if they were bothering your but we won't talk about that. We don't do that, I promise. Okay. Yeah. All right. But before we jump into the message, I want to know, how did each of you spend Mother's Day? I realize, PR, that you're not a mother, but you should have spent Mother's Day well. So how did each of you spend Mother's Day on Sunday?
I took a nap, and then
Wow. Whoa.
I know.
Pause right there.
Unusual for me. I took a nap.
Good.
And then went out with my kids to my daughter's house, and we just all chilled and let the grandkids run around crazy.
That's not really new, that part of it.
No.
Did you get to choose what you had for dinner or lunch or whatever?
I just told my kids there's no food at my house. I'm not preparing any food. So if we do anything, it's on them.
Awesome.
So it was
PB&J all the way around?
No, she made an amazing
I
meal.
bet she did. Okay, that's awesome. And I'm still stuck at you took a nap. That right there is like Jesus is coming back. Pastor Mickey took a nap.
That's what I'm doing for Father's Day. Y'all looking for me after church on Father's Day?
After the
Father's Day is
cookout.
Sunday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always the same, yeah.
It's on a Sunday.
It's in June.
Oh, it is. I forget because
We're doing the cookout.
Yeah, I know. We're doing that. For me, spend the day baseball.
Oh, yeah.
It was amazing. It was awesome. The boys won their first tournament this
Yay.
year. Yay. So it was great. And it was awesome to see the moms that actually love watching their kids play. And we had new jerseys for
I
the boys.
saw that.
Yeah, with
So
the moms'
cool.
names in the back. And
Yeah.
so, the coaches were just telling them, hey, play for the name on the back of the jersey. And they
Love
were
it.
all like stoked. And so it was really, really fun. So I got home exhausted. So wanted to take a nap, didn't take a nap, but we just got some Chinese because that's what Mama wanted to do. And so got some Chinese, watched a movie together, and
Good.
just chill.
That's a good day. Awesome.
Evening, yep.
I think, Victoria's probably not anywhere happier than on a ball field,
Yeah.
especially if they're winning.
Oh,
so
yes.
that's a
Yeah.
good Mother's Day for V.
Yeah.
This was my first year of not having a baseball player, so I didn't have a baseball tournament on Mother's Day weekend, so that was kind of strange too. But anyways, okay.
What did you do?
Yeah.
Oh, what did I do? I just had my mom and my mother and father-in-law over for dinner. And I tried to hang out outside in the sun was my plan for a couple of hours, but then the sun went away by the time I left church. So I was a little bit disappointed in that. I was like, well, Okay, we'll just piddle around and do some chores, and then then they
Well,
came over.
Catch
so.
up on the sun the rest of this week. I think this weekend's going to be really, really nice. Like Saturday's going to be in the 80s. So
Yeah, I think in the weekend, right? Tomorrow
Yeah.
maybe, and then it's rain, and then the weekend.
the weekend, yeah.
Okay.
Which is okay.
I'll be there.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure. I can't go. I'm going on the youth missions trip to Nicaragua here in a couple weeks, and I really, listen, I can't go this white.
Yeah, you can't.
I got to get some color before we get there. So, anyways, that's my goal.
There you go.
I know it's very, very trivial, but anyways, okay.
5 minutes.
Stop. He's telling what
Just
the timer says
gotta
off
keep
camera. Okay. But Pastor Miki, usually we try to help our listeners get to know our pastors better.
Okay.
So since this is your first time, I'm going to throw you a couple questions and then we'll jump into the message. So when did you first start to love gardening, and have you always been good at it?
I first started gardening with my dad, and he was good at it. And part of it was our chores to weed and do those things. But I grew up with tons of fruit and things in the backyard, and so I just did that with my dad.
Okay. That's awesome. And were you good at it from the beginning?
Well, my job was pulling the weeds.
Okay. Well, when you
so-
started gardening in your own, like your own home,
You know what? I would say probably yes, because I was passionate about it.
Okay.
So, yeah, I have always had a lot of things growing in my yard.
yes, and then you bring them in, and you have it all planned out all winter, how you take care of them, and then get them back out. It's amazing. PR, do you love gardening? Have you always been good at it?
No, the only things growing in my yard is weeds, and so I know I don't grow. That's too much work. Like, listen, I said it before. Like, if I could just torch my front lawn and my back lawn, so I don't have to mow it and take care of.
You know, in
things.
Colorado, most of the yards are just rock, like
I
small
know,
pebbles and
I
stuff.
love that. And
because
like,
the grass just
when
dies.
you go to Arizona,
Yeah.
or anything like that,
Yeah.
like, there are people though that do that fake grass thing,
Yes,
like
I've
they
seen
put
that.
turf on it. That's really tacky.
I think so
like,
too.
yeah.
Sorry if any of you have turf.
No, it is tacky.
You could try the all rock thing. I mean,
rock is cool, but it's
Yeah.
in Nebraska, weeds come through it, and
That's
so like
true.
you have to put that whole thing first, and anyway, it's too much work. So
Too
no,
much work.
I do not like. I'm sorry, Mickey,
No,
but I
hey.
don't like gardening. I don't like to spend my days out there doing that. But
I don't either. I'm just in the last few years have I even been successful at growing a house plant. And I just always tell people, hey,
I know the story.
I just tell people I'm really good at growing humans. I do not
there you
need to
go.
be good at growing a
And
plant.
you grow them
There you
very
go.
big.
I
So
do,
Yes.
right? And then as they keep moving out, then I can add another plant to the family. And I'm like, hey, I'm getting this down.
We just need plants
know,
for you
I
that
just need-
hardly need any water or
Right.
hardly any sun, and then you're good.
Yeah, or they can need sun. They just need to be able to if I put you in direct sun, you need to be able to handle direct sun. You
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
I don't have time for this business. I got to move you around and turn you and whatever, or talk to you or
So
sing
low
to you.
maintenance.
Low maintenance.
Okay.
Low maintenance. Okay. One other question. What is a day in your life that you would love to relive?
That I would love to relive. That's a hard one. You know, I think one of the days would probably be one where I was bringing one of my kids home. They were amazing days. And just enjoying being a mom.
Those are pretty cool days. Yeah, and that was a really good way of wording it, because you can't say one of the kids.
I was just going to say,
The
okay,
day I brought
pick
home,
one. Which
beep.
day? Can you give us the date specifically? Your best day of your life?
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a pretty cool moment. PR, do you have a favorite day you'd like to relive?
There are several, but not to sound very churchy, but giving my life to Jesus, I think that day nothing tops that for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in your case, that was a pretty powerful day.
Yep,
That's
it
pretty
was.
cool. Yeah. Okay, let's jump into the message. All right, we have a lot to talk about. You, Pastor Miki, took us through the lives of 4 women in the Bible. And really, I find myself thinking, do most people know that there's even more than like Mary, the mother of Jesus, Ruth and Esther, because there's a book named after them? And isn't that it? Like, wow, there's more women in the Bible. Go figure. So I love that you did that. And I was even talking to my family on Sunday, and which I'm in an all-boy home because my daughter is grown and out of the house. And so it's often me and all the men in the house. But I was pointing out to them that often when I sit in church, I'm usually always listening to the Bible through the lens of a male character. So it was nice to be able to sit there and listen about female characters. Not to say that it shouldn't appeal to both
Right.
men and women, which was what was really good about the message on Sunday is even the men in my family were able to super relate to the message, which I love. You did a phenomenal job of that. How was it for you, PR, listening to it as a man? Was it fine, or was it,
And for me, I guess, and you already said it, like Pastor Miki, you did a phenomenal job. And to me, it did not feel like it was a women specific message. And so I was like, I didn't even realize that until you now asking the question, how did I feel about it? I mean, to me, it's like everything was applied, leaving a legacy. I didn't think about, well, how are women leaving a legacy? Well, I think that you did a really good job of saying, hey, what do you want to be known for? And so I think that's what I remember from it. But it is interesting that some of the women, when you unpack their lives, you think about, wow, what a great deposit they made, into the history of Christianity, of Judaism, and so just such a great way to paint the picture of how pivotal these women were, and we can relate to them today.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, even just listening to the story of Deborah and how Barak says to her, well, if you go, then I'll go.
Yeah.
Like, he is a soldier. He is military. And he is saying to her, if you go, then I'll go. And if you don't go, I'm not going, whatever. Like, and then how that brought peace to Israel for 40 years by her being obedient, by her being courageous and brave and speaking up and representing the Lord. It was just seeing it and hearing it like that. Sometimes we get to reading and we lose track of what we're reading. We don't really sit back and think about the magnitude of what we just read.
Well, and this is, I think that when you bring Deborah up, because I really love that passage, and when you talked about her, like, it's sometimes we lose the fact, we think, oh, okay, it was Jesus who, when after he came, he gave women their rightful place, right, in society. No, our Father has been doing that. God has been doing that, since the foundation. And so we see this woman here, and it shows you the authority that she had and the influence that she had, that this warrior is saying, nope, if you don't come, we're not going.
And I would like to say, I think it isn't even have anything to do with the fact that she was a woman.
Right.
The whole
Right.
point is she was so sold on who God was that no matter who was in her presence, he shone through. And so just being in her presence reminded people that this is her God, this is who she trusts. And so I think it's that it doesn't matter for a man or a woman what is coming out in the actions and the things we say.
That's
Yeah,
really
and
good.
so, but in reality, it doesn't really matter if it's a man or a woman, but in this story, it does matter.
Yeah.
Because in that culture, it mattered that it was a woman.
Yeah.
In our culture today, in some circles, it matters, right? So to see a woman operating at that level with the courage that it takes, right? Because it's like, yeah, it is easy to step out in authority when you know that it's expected and this will be well received, right? But in a culture where this was not the norm, like you said, she's the only one that is mentioned. Hey, she is a prophetess, she's a judge, and like prophet and judge, and it's like, boom, and now she's speaking, and because of her obedience, now the Israelites, as Tana was saying, are reaping the benefit for 40 years of peace. So, great.
So tell us again the three, you kind of called them action steps, actions that we need to choose to live from in order to leave a legacy. I think you gave us three, and then
did.
like a fourth caveat maybe.
Yes.
But
The first one was to remember who he is. Second was then to repeat that over and over again to everybody you have influence. And then to remain or to not give up even when life gets tough. Because it's easy to say those things, but it's difficult when you're in those circumstances to remain if you're not surrounded with people that can help encourage you.
that's so true. So in the first one with remember, and you talked about Deborah leaves a legacy of dependence on God, and she remembered his voice, she obeyed his leading, and that you said in that, then you have a story to tell others so that they can be encouraged about his faithfulness. Like God met Deborah, and we can have the same experience. So can you guys both share something maybe that you remember in your journey of learning to depend on God, listen, obey, because I want people to hear it and be inspired the same way. Can you think of a time?
Well, one thing that I didn't share on Sunday that if we had more time, I would have shared is I talked about when my dad had cancer and the difficulty and the going through that struggle. But I get to go back to my story. In another story that happened in our lives is my granddaughter got cancer a few years back. And when we started going through this again, it hit home in a different way. But I got to remember. And I think for me, the big thing is I got to remember who God was and is. And he didn't answer the way I wanted the first time. But even in that, those moments of just being in God's presence and just breaking down before him and helping me to be able to surrender to his will above mine. When we got to the situation the second time, I remembered those moments, and he had taught me to pray in a different way. And so for me, it was like, okay, God, we've been here before, but remembering him, it took a different place in my prayer life. And it was like, okay, you know what, enemy? This time, you've messed with me again, and it's not going to go well. And it just, it brought back everything of who God was, and my prayer life changed. And so I went in it different, and not saying that had the answer been the same, it would have changed, but it was like, I don't care what you think you're going to do. I am not going to give up. And so for me, just remembering who God was, and it allowed me to kind of be a pillar in our family, because it was tough on all of us. And so for me, that was just like the continuation of this circumstance led for a different way I was going to approach it again. And I'm thankful God answered differently this way, this time. And I have an amazing 6-year-old little granddaughter who has been healed with so many testimonies in there. We don't have the time to talk about it.
Yep. This happens sometimes on this podcast is I'm getting taught something while I'm sitting here. So, I hate having to do this on mic and on camera. Just this morning in a meeting, we were praying for someone close to me who is fighting cancer. And I kind of forget sometimes in my moment of emotion who's in the room with me. You're there, Kirsten, the mother of the child we're talking about. And so I'm thinking about how the first time you prayed for healing was for your dad, and he didn't get healed here on earth. He went home, right?
Well, he got healed.
Okay.
He just got to be with
I
Jesus.
said on earth. Okay. Okay. So, that's a messy one. Like you said, it wasn't answered the way you thought.
Yep.
So then when it happens with Tessa, when she was like 2, I'm thinking many of us would get,
Yeah, here we go again.
Here we go again. And you didn't meet me the first time. How can I trust you would meet me this time? And then instead, I'm hearing, you got, I'm pulling up my bootstraps. Oh, you messed with the wrong woman today. And I don't know where that comes from. Like maybe if I was faced with it, maybe it would come from, but even just in the way I prayed for my friend this morning, I didn't pray from you healed Tessa. I watched you do it. So I want to see you do it here. I didn't pray from that place. I prayed from a lesser than place.
No, so I think that is not part of the podcast, but I think that your prayer was very, very genuine and from the heart. And so like you in front of all of us, you opened up and said, Lord, I've already prayed a lot of times about this. I don't even know. And so, but you were calling for a miracle, and whatever doubts you might have in your mind, that you never actually have prayed for someone to be healed of cancer, and they have been healed.
Yeah.
But the thing is that's what I love about the stories that you share too of these women. It's like their stories are an encouragement to us, and that's why those stories, the children of Israel, they were repeating these stories. That's why they were communicating it to their children, because faith comes by hearing. And so we hear that, oh, Tessa was healed. That means that your friend can be healed. And so you also had another friend before that you have been praying for, and she wasn't healed. She went to be with the Lord, and wasn't here on this side of heaven, however you want to word that. But the reality is that the things that God does in every single one of our lives is that it could be a testimony for somebody else. And so to me, that's what it speaks. So for me, a time that I think about, and this has nothing to do with healing, but more to do in the area of faith. It was Victoria and I, newlyweds. She's working a full-time job. I'm working a full-time job. We're all, trying to make ends meet. She gets pregnant. We end up finding out a few months after pregnancy that she has to stay in bed. She can't work. Well, she doesn't have a job that she can actually get paid when she's in bed rest. So now we have one income. We have all the bills and all the stuff. And I was going crazy. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And so I said, well, the only logical thing to do is me to go get another job. So my plan was to work 2 full-time jobs. And so I went, applied for another job, got the job, did not feel at peace with this whole thing. Have been praying. And I really felt in me that I was doing what's right in my head for my family. But inside of me, something was telling me this is wrong. And so I went all the way to the first day of training, pulled up in the parking lot of this other place, and I'm listening to worship music. I turn off the radio and I take a deep breath, and the Lord said, I never told you to take this job. You doing this on your own. But if you trust me, I'll take care of you. And so I went inside, talked to the manager, and quit. And I told him why. He asked me, wow, like this is a shot. I said, well, and I don't know, sometimes we don't know where these things come from, but it's the Lord. I told him, I said, I have a pregnant wife at home. She needs me, and I want to serve Jesus with my life. And he says, I made you a husband before anything else, and you have to take care of her, and you have to take care of your home in a physical way, not in a financial way. There's not only one way, right? So you have to be there physically and emotionally. And he said he's going to take care of me, and I need to trust him. And so I walked out of there, got in my car, kind of emotional, which is a new thing for me at that point. And so drove home, told her I didn't take the job. She's like, what? Okay. And she was somewhat relieved, which I didn't know. And so from that moment on, we had no needs. And so it's unexplainable. And it's that sort of thing that it's like, okay, Lord, like if ever we get in a rough spot, I'm like, I've seen you do it before. So
Right.
like, and I can't explain it to you. So those are the kind of things that hopefully as you're listening or you're watching this, it's like, okay, yeah, Rafael's story, like you can rely on that and say, Father, the same way that you met Rafael and Victoria that time, I know that you can meet us. The same way that you met Pastor Miki with her grandchild that was healed, that's the same way that you can meet us in this need for healing. So anyway.
That's good. And even in that, I hear what we hear is the dependence piece, and to trust his faithfulness, because I know even for you, PR, there have been seasons where God did say, go ahead and grab that second job, that part-time job or whatever. Yep. And those were the ways that he said, I'm going to sustain you and
Right.
give you the strength
Right.
to be able to do that. And then there were other times where it was, no, you need to do what I've called you to first and learn how to trust me. So there's different pieces and elements to him in
Right.
trusting in his faithfulness. So the overarching here in this situation is the remembering our dependence on him,
Right.
so that then we can share those stories and other people can learn, okay, even when it doesn't make sense, I can learn to depend on him, listen to that still small voice, and respond in obedience.
And it's the listening.
Listening,
As you said,
it's a big part.
It's a big part. Like you have to know the voice of the Father. And so you have to get used to it. And I hear people ask me, so how do I know? I'm like, when I hear anyone who's close to me, like I could hear one of you ladies outside of my office or in the hallway. I know it's Tana. I know it's Pastor Miki, right? Because I know you. I spend time with you. So, but if I hear a stranger, I'm like, who is that? So that's all I'm going to say about that. That's probably another podcast.
That's good. Okay, the second one was repeat, and that's the one where you use the example of Lois and Eunice. And there, really they're evidence of how to like intentionally leave a legacy because it went to her daughter, and then they actually get to watch it go to Timothy. They get to see Timothy in action and how that's beautiful. That's something I look forward to now that I have grown kids and grandkids.
Yeah.
Like, holy cow, this is going to be super cool to watch. I think of like, oh, that's why my mom makes such a big deal about watching the generations, is
Yeah.
because, wow, she's the first generation to follow Jesus. And now she gets to watch the fruit of that very hard labor through me and now through the kids and through the grandkids. That's so amazing. So, and Pastor Miki, I know you have, I just said my mom is first generation Christian. For you, you have a little bit longer of a legacy, I believe, and then also getting to watch it now through your grandkids. So share a bit of your journey maybe, and just whatever. You have had a lot of experience with the Lord, but just share a little bit of your journey of building that legacy with God that's now going into your children and grandchildren.
I don't honestly know how many generations, which is,
That's
I
super
was
cool.
just like going, I don't know. My grandma has a book that multiple generations before her wrote when they came to America. And she has something that we've actually had translated from German of the first one in our family that was standing on American ground, praying for everyone that would come after her, that they would know the God that she had met.
Wow.
And I know it's in the 1800s somewhere.
Wow.
So there's a lot of history. To me, that just shows the faithfulness of God. And I think it's so amazing to look back, and I recognize that I'm incredibly blessed, incredibly blessed. But for me, it's that repeating. I also know that that woman standing there intentionally poured into her kids and was praying for the unborn. I know my grandma, and she told me stories on both sides. My mom was a children's pastor, and so our home was constantly filled with, this is who God is, this is what he did, here are the characters in the Bible. And so it just came out.
How old were you when your mom passed away?
My biological mom passed away when I was 2.
Okay. And then how old were you when, who you call your mom, who has raised you as her daughter, how old were you when she came in?
3.
Okay.
So
Right.
my mom passed away and my dad remarried the same year.
Okay. Whoa.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of story in there. But yeah, incredible mom that raised me. She is my mom.
Yep.
And she just always allowed God to shine through in the things that we learned. And so I learned it at such a young age that I think the thing that I love about repeating is I didn't even realize that I was repeating because it was so ingrained.
Wow.
And I think I see that now in my children because all of my grandkids love to talk about the stories. In fact, they love to come over. Just this morning, a couple of them are spending the night at our house right now, and the first thing Peyton said is, tell me a story. Because it is such a habit of ours to still tell stories of who God is that they expect it.
That's really good. I was thinking when you were preaching on Sunday, even just the tell your kids your story, tell your kids a story, the stories of the Bible, but also tell them your story, age appropriately. And I can remember, I can remember vividly still where I told my daughter my story, and then I can remember when I told my boys, my 2 older boys, not my youngest one, I don't think yet, but the two older boys were during COVID when the world was locked down, and all we could do was go take a walk outside, and so I took them one by one and told them, and something changed in our dynamic in that time when it clicked of, oh, this is why mom's so crazy. This is why, crazy in the good way and the bad way. This is why she so passionately loves Jesus. This is why she wants other people to know Jesus, because she knows him in a way that they don't know him yet. They haven't experienced him that way yet. And just being able to watch those moments happen. And also I think parents often are actually people in general, we get ashamed to tell our story. And it was a couple of years ago, I was actually working on a class we were offering here, and I really felt like the Holy Spirit spoke a truth to me. And it had to do with shame. And people don't want to tell their story because they're ashamed of it. But God said, you're human. And his word even says he remembers that we're human, you know? And so he knows that I'm never going to be able to live up. I'm never going to be sinless and perfect. And that when I try to hide my story, then it removes glory from him of what he's done in my life. And so when I share my story, people get to see his kindness, his mercy, his love, his grace, all these things about him. And I think about the moments my kids responded when we were on that walk. They were experiencing, wow, the grace of God, the unconditional love of God by hearing me talk about it and talk about my story rather than being ashamed. And I just want to encourage you as listeners that don't be afraid. Do I completely understand that? Yes, you don't tell your story to everybody.
Right.
You tell your story age appropriate with your children, the pieces that they need to know at the certain ages that they are. And there's some things maybe they never need to know. But in teaching them who God is and how you got to know him the way you do, we're repeating that so that they grow up being able to tell their story.
Right.
It gives God glory and it helps others truly find their salvation. I mean, that's what it's there for. And shame is the enemy's way of trying to steal that success in the mission and steal glory from God. And so we just have to get rid of it and celebrate our story. I just went on a tangent. I'm so sorry, but I get passionate
good.
about that piece. So, okay, this kind of jumps us into, we'll come back to the final step, but I want us to get to the part where you talked about, some of us might be listening and think our legacy is ruined. And you transitioned into Rahab, which, by the way, good job with all the R's. You know, what is that called that you pastors do when you're like,
I don't know.
R,
I don't
R,
do
R,
that.
R? No? Well, it was very
I thought
impressive.
about
It didn't
it
even
too,
feel
'cause
forced.
Yeah.
Like, it just felt very natural.
Yeah. But she's a PK. She's a pastor's kid, so she's seen that
had
done.
decades of this.
Yeah, she's like, we have to come up with titles that they're all R's. Remember.
Yeah.
What was it?
Remain,
repeat.
Oh, yeah, repeat, remain.
Yeah,
and then ruined, yet redeemed.
Yeah.
And her name is Rahab.
Yeah. It's like-
Some of it was unintentional.
It's so cool. Even again, referring back to my boys on Sunday talking about it, they were like, the title change of Rahab, the descriptor. I have that same kind of a descriptor change for me of like when I showed up here at church, I was the 19-year-old who was pregnant. And it was literally like I was wearing the scarlet letter A on the front of me. And I was just with someone last week and they said, oh my gosh, I totally forgot. That's how you showed up here. You know, I'm like, yep. But God redeemed my ruined legacy. And people forget now or whatever. So
Because it's no longer your legacy.
because it's no longer my legacy. It's so wonderful. So talking about Rahab, she chose to take a stand with God, with the God of the Israelites. And I was thinking, like, no matter what her family or her community or her city, the God they follow, or the gods plural that they followed, she chose to take a stand. And I don't know what kind of reputation prostitutes had in that day, but I'm sure it's probably not the greatest reputation still. And she chose to take a stand to believe in the God of Israel and to help them. And I think many of us have to make choices like that, of a stand with our family or friends or community that we're in or whatever. And it's really hard to do that, what Rahab did. How do we do it? How do we make a stand like that?
So the first thing, just because it's something remarkable that happened with her proclamation that the God of the Hebrews, the God of Israel, is the one true God. The Bible says that without faith it is impossible to please God. And those that come to him have to come believing that he is who he says he is. So that's exactly what Rahab did.
Yeah.
And like we know that in the New Testament to be true. Like, you know, if you come and you believe in who Jesus says he is, then you can receive salvation. This is a picture of redemption, of salvation, of like she was saved from destruction. Why? Because she proclaimed, this is the one and true God. I believe that, and I'm going to help those that are doing his work. And so it's like, oh, wow, how do we do that? The first step will be declare that, Yahweh is who he is, right? And so have faith in God, and it flows from that place. So I love the story, Pastor Miki. I mean, the way that you broke it down and her change in identity is not only the title, it was a change in identity.
Yeah, so good.
She was a mother then after that, not a prostitute. And so I love that.
And I think that's a beautiful picture of what that looks like, to move from before I knew Christ to now I'm a child of God.
Yeah.
And the Bible literally calls us righteous. Like,
Right.
when's the last time you used the word righteous to define yourself?
Yeah, that's true.
But the reality is that is who we are as a child of God. It's the same thing. Like, she knew she had been a prostitute, but she had to make the decision of understanding that that isn't who I am anymore. God now has removed that from my identity. Not that I'm not going to share my story and what he does,
Right.
but I'm no longer going to live like that because it's not who I am. Going back to just being identifying as his child. I'm a child of God. I'm redeemed. I'm righteous in his sight. He's pleased with me. No matter what those inner thoughts are running through my head, they're not truth. What he says about me in God's word is the truth. And I have to live like that.
I was just going to say, I think that next step then is to turn off the other voices and the lies that are in there. And I remember in my journey, I had a spiritual mentor in my life, and he finally just had to say to me, you have to take control of those things. And I'm like, I'm trying, but I just keep, this is who I am, blah, blah, blah. And he would say, it's just like a video playing in your head. And you just say, stop. I'm turning it off. Because and then once he said that to me, I started to pay attention of, oh, the thought pops in. That's not the problem. It's that I sit there and start to watch the movie instead of turning it off.
That's
and
good.
saying, I've seen this movie before. I'm not in this movie. And sometimes I'll say, now when I tell my story, it's like I'm literally talking about a movie I watched. It doesn't even, that's not even close to who I am. And it's been so long now, but it was a long journey to get there and learning how to turn it off and believe the right things. So it's twofold. We have to learn the things, then we have to believe the things. So it's 3 steps. Then we got to turn off the lies that are in there.
And I would say, to add a fourth thing, perhaps, is something that also grabs me about the story of Rahab. She was in Jericho, right? A nation that wasn't following God, like you said, Tana. They had many gods. But then it's funny that in the scripture that you read, so in Joshua it says that, and she lives with the Israelites. She lives with that crew now until this day. So she not only changed identity, she changed her community. And so many times what changed for you, Tana, for example, is you changed your community.
Yep.
You ended up coming to church. You found a community and a group of people that welcome you, that encouraged you, that equipped you, that discipled you, and then you started to grow, kind of like those flowers that you showed yesterday, right? That they were planted, but you got to take care of that. And so like that changed, even Rahab's legacy, because she was no longer associated with the previous crew. And that's what happened in my life. It's like, it was a total shift. Yeah, God did a work internally in my life, and my identity was no longer in who I used to be, but there was a new community that I had that also, it was at like a different soil that now was rich, and it had the nutrients that I needed, and I began to grow. So that's what I would say as an additional little
I agree,
point.
for sure. Okay, let's get into Remain so that we can get these people off to do the rest of their life. We're stealing an hour of their life right now. Okay.
It's an investment.
It is
We're
an
not stealing
investment.
anything.
Remain here with us. That's the last point. Remain. So you even mentioned Abigail is, I think the words you said was living in a family that is choosing evil. She chooses to go they're choosing to go against the one true God, but she boldly stood up to that and chose to remain faithful and depend on God, despite what her husband and the entire community was doing. And I wondered, have either of you been faced with the choice of having to choose to remain despite what everybody around you is doing.
Well, for me, I'm sorry, but as far as remaining, like I literally lost everybody I knew.
Me too.
All of my friends, like when I came to Jesus, everybody. I mean, people are like, oh yeah, nice, like you, and I was very vocal, obviously, and like I wouldn't shut up, and so like, I lost, that community that I just talked about, like I lost everybody. I was like, where did everybody go? Like now I'm alone, but so not quite. Obviously not quite the same thing, but I think that's when the rubber meets the road, right? Like I made a decision, and I'm going to follow Jesus, and so now, what is it that? Because sometimes we think, well, I'm losing this or I'm losing that. No, you're gaining, but sometimes we pay attention to the things that we
Sure
may
do.
be losing, or that we feel like it's a loss, but ultimately, in the long run. You gain a father, you gain a community, you gain a new identity. So you were going to say something.
I would say for me, it probably wasn't choosing to leave friends that were negative behind. It was choosing to be with people who were healthy over my entire life. Because I can remember I went to a private school, I went to a Christian school all through my middle school years, and even in the Christian school, a lot of choices were being made by a lot of people, and I was not the popular crowd. I was the unpopular one, and it hurt. I mean, I can still look back, and it was just like, man, how come I never am going to have any friends because I'm not choosing to do the things that they're all doing? Then I went to public school in high school, and it was an interesting dynamic, because everyone knew I was the pastor's child. At the time, Footloose was a movie that I'd never seen. And kids would actually, in high school, they would say things like, you got to come to this party. We can, because, you're like the pastor's daughter. We can relive the movie. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? And almost having to make those choices back then, like, I'm okay with not being popular. And so it was just a different lifestyle maybe. And I'll just say, because of God's faithfulness of who I was surrounded with and by amazing parents. And so they were still tough choices. It was a different choice. It was just like, no, I'm not going to the party. No, I'm not going to drink, because I already know who God is, and I've seen adults with messy lives of where you're going.
Yep.
And so it was a different choose to remain for me, probably my entire life.
Yeah. That's good. I'm thinking that, like, we are watching our kids be that role.
Right.
I was raised in Christian school, but I was too much trying to fit in. I wanted to love Jesus, but I wanted to feel like loved and that I fit in and all those kind of things. And so I went down the wrong path. But just now getting to watch our kids, that they'll talk sometimes. It's lonely.
Yeah.
And it's hard to make those choices. And mom and dad won't let me do this or do that or say this or say that or, whatever. And yeah, we said it a couple weeks ago, the road is narrow.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult sometimes to live that. And sometimes you feel that for your kids of, I get it. Those are tough things, but choose to remain. One of my favorite scriptures, it's on my arm, is in Daniel 3:18, and it's the boys are getting ready to get thrown into the fiery furnace, and they say, we're not going to worship your God, we're not going to worship you, King, and God's going to show up, but if not, we still won't worship you. And it was like when I finally got onto that of like, it is settled for me that I am left to my own devices, I will destroy my life, destroy it, and the legacy I leave. And I don't want to do that. I can't do that. And I remember having my daughter and thinking, I was a little bit short-sighted, but it was good intention of, I don't want her to be a statistic like I was just a statistic. And so I am going to pursue Jesus wholeheartedly. I don't care what I have to give up. I don't want to repeat this. I don't want to repeat this. And that's where our hearts are for the people at Good News, our family here at Good News, is that, and like you said, it was the choice to get into new community. It wasn't always easy. Some people were kind of dorky. Some people were like, this is my coolest friends now.
Yeah.
Well, listen,
I didn't fit.
I didn't fit either, but I will stay here and stay here and stay here until I can become who God wants me to become, regardless of if I don't quite fit or it feels a little bit different or whatever. And now it's one of my favorite places to be, right, is with our Good News family. And it's just that dig deep and remain. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, Psalm 1, being planted somewhere that will give you life so that you can make these kind of choices like what Abigail made.
But can I say something just about that real quick? So there's a responsibility of the community, but it's also the responsibility of the individual.
Agreed.
So, like as Pastor Miki preached this message, all of these women had a responsibility that was theirs and nobody else's. And so, like when we're saying, remain, when you remain, there's the responsibility of the community. Like a Good News family, all of us have a responsibility to those that are in a, like let's say, in a Rahab state, that they just now figure out that that's not who I am anymore. I am this new person, right? We have a responsibility. But what I heard through and through in this message was choice.
Me too.
Choice. Choice. You have a choice.
Yep.
Now, which one would you choose?
Yep.
Because your question right from the get-go was, what do you want to be known for? And you will make choices that you will be known by. So that's very important, because as we move forward in our life, like you talk about legacy, and now that we're getting a little bit more experience and seasoned, AKA old, that's what we're going to be known for. So right now for me, it's like, I don't want to screw up big time, because that's what I'm going to be known for, right? Like you could live your life serving Jesus all your life, and if you mess up towards the end, that's it. That's what you could run the best 75-yard dash, right? And if that last 25 you mess up and you trip and you fall on your face and you end up not finishing, that's what's going to be all over everybody's feed, right? But it is a choice. And every single one of us, we wake up every morning and we make choices. It's every second of every moment. And those choices then pile up one on top of another, and then they create what we're talking about, a legacy.
That's right.
So
That's so good. That choice aspect is so good, because we definitely live in a culture of I deserve, or I'm entitled to, or,
don't get me started.
whatever. And it's like, nope, we all three represent slightly different ways of making choices.
Right.
Making choices of who Miki was going to be when she was in high school,
Right.
and making choices of who we were going to be when we finally said, enough is enough. I give my life to you, God. I will give up everything because I want to follow you. I want to follow you, period. And that is so much what all these women have done too, is they made these choices. Remember, repeat, remain, and that ruined legacy can be redeemed. I love it. So for our listeners, as we wrap up, what maybe, how do you envision people responding to this message, or what are some action steps that they could take maybe this week practically to help them to live the legacy that they want?
For me, I think one of the immediate and easy action steps is, are there people in your life that are encouraging you? Because if not, you have got to step out and find some people to be in your corner. And you might be that person that needs to be in someone else's corner. If there aren't people that you're encouraging, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? There are a ton of people in our Good News family, in your neighborhood, in your immediate family, that when's the last time you said, you know what, can I pray for you? Hey, you look like you're struggling today. Is there something that I can read God's word with, or I can talk to you, or can I tell you how I dealt with a situation that was similar? So stop being a solo Christian.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's
How
good.
about you?
Well, as a parting thought, I guess, when it comes to leaving a legacy, and I think you mentioned something in the message. Don't know if it's just in my head, but sometimes in America we think about, you share a quote from Billy Graham. And so sometimes in America we think that, oh, I want to be financially stable to leave our kids a chunk of cash. We want to have property. We want to have all of these things. We want to have a good name, right? So I think that ultimately, as Christians, I would say, what spiritual legacy? So not only legacy, but spiritual legacy are we leaving for the next generation, for our kids? And, you know, we have spiritual kids as well. So like, what are we leaving? And so in my mind, and obviously we're moving up there in age, so it's like a lot of us are thinking this way, but I want to speak perhaps to those of you that may be a little younger and maybe a little earlier in your journey with Jesus. And so I would say that the question about what do you want to be known for is even more of a practical question. Don't think legacy. Think about, if I die today, what's going to be said about me in my funeral tomorrow? Like, what is it going to be said?
That's right.
And not what everybody says, oh, such a great guy. Oh, such a hard worker. Oh, like we hear it, like everybody's glorious and wonderful when they die. No, like if in our reality, nobody else is watching, it's anonymous, and something is said about your life, what will be said, right? Better yet, if the one who knows you better than anybody else, if Jesus was to say, this is who Rafael is, what will he say? So what do you want to be known for? And so they ask yourself that question and ask the Lord that question in prayer. Lord, what should I desire to be known for, right? Because sometimes our desires get in the way. I want to be known as a great businesswoman, a great businessman, or an entrepreneur, or as great in my field, or whatever it is, as a great mom, a great dad, whatever. What does Jesus want you to be known for?
Yeah.
So
that's so good. I think we're just going to end on that note. What do you want to be known for? Starting at, I mean, this could be teenagers listening. I mean, it's like, what do you want to be known for? Every phase of our life, who are you? What do you represent? What do you want to be known for? And then how can you become that?
Yeah,
what do you need to do
absolutely.
next?
That's good.
Who do you need to be around? What do you need to stop? Or who do you need to let go of?
Yep.
Those kinds of things to become. And those are all choices, and they're not easy choices. But if you want to leave the legacy that you hope to, we have to make difficult choices.
Absolutely.
We just thank you guys so much for being here today. We hope that you are blessed by this conversation, that you are encouraged. And if you want to ask questions or you're kind of stuck after a conversation like this, you can, again, email us at podcast@goodnews.church. Tell someone around you about this podcast. I know that they would love to hear more from Pastor Miki, know a little bit more about her life, as this was her first time with us. Thank you guys again for taking time out of your day. Did great yet again. And we will chat with you all next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks again for joining us today. We would love for you to tell others about the podcast. Make sure you subscribe to it too, because this will help others find out about it. If you missed it before, we love to hear from you. So if you have any stories to tell about how the message impacted you, or maybe you have a question or comment, make sure you email us at podcast@goodnews.church. Y'all, this is my favorite day of the week. So go give away what you just learned, and we'll chat again next time.